Actually, our previous service was characterized by technical glitches. I see it's continuing. Our theme this month is stewardship of our planet, and we started the theme talking about love as a necessary mindset for being a good steward of the planet. Really, it's a necessary mindset for being a good steward of anything. Then the second week, we talked about examples of love in action from inspiring individuals around the world who are working to change our relationship with our planet so that we can see ourselves as capable of making a beneficial impact on our planet. Now, today we are going further into it and we're talking about another important mindset: facing our fears and moving beyond them. Now, whether we're talking about being a steward of the planet, or we're just learning to thrive in our lives, or we're moving home, or we're working through things in relationship, or we're trying to get involved in social reform, moving through fear continues to be part of the spiritual journey. It's not something we can bypass. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, wrote about fear like this. He said, "Fear and faith are identical in that the energy used in the one is the same energy as that used in the other." There is one energy in the universe, and this energy is the energy of thought. And here, when he says thought, he means, of course, thought fueled by the warmth and color and feeling of deep conviction. He goes on to say, fear is a positive acceptance that you will experience what you dislike. Faith is a positive acceptance that you will experience what you do like. But they are identical. The only difference is the direction. Well, that's important because we are part of the planet. Of course, it matters how we treat the planet physically, but we're learning also that the direction of our consciousness, our fears, our faith, our emotions, our thoughts, that matters also. In our recommended book of the month, Spiritual Ecology, you heard a reading this morning, The Cry of the Earth. Editor Llewellyn Vaughan Lee writes, "The current environmental movement is driven by fear of doom and disaster. That cannot be the right direction for a truly sustainable future. Love and reverence for the earth will automatically result in sustainability, harmony, and coherence." That's a big opinion. And it's challenging, I think, to keep our minds in a faithful direction. Partly because we live in a world of 24-hour news, which can, if we let it, bombard us with fear and doom. It's not that we don't have very important, serious issues to deal with. We do. Today we're talking about our focus, our direction. Is it faithful or fearful? If my focus is exclusively on what is wrong, then I might be using that one creative energy for a particular and narrow purpose. And maybe there is another way. Maybe a more powerful, a more creative way that I can use it with faith and love and reverence. We can't blame the news entirely. Some of us don't need the news to get all worked up. Our own self-talk can stir up all kinds of fear inside of us without any help from anyone. And it's difficult to have a solution-oriented discussion about anything when fear is driving the bus. I learned early in metaphysics, studying the science of mind at a center for spiritual living just like this, to reframe fearful thoughts. I remember the word fear and learning about the acronym, this one, forget everything and run. And I learned how to reframe that and instead to think of it as face everything and rise. Now, the real answers to life are not in reframing acronyms alone. I mean, it's fun. It's helpful to start there, kind of like training wheels. But the real work is a deeper process that takes practice. My experience is that as one fear is faced and moved through, another one pops up. And so it goes. So I had to learn, I had to practice being clear as I could be on what I had faith in. What do I trust as much or more than my fear voices? Or for that matter, what do I trust more than the fear voices around me? When I was a licensed prayer practitioner and I would see clients for spiritual coaching, clients would often come to see me to discuss their problems. That's what we go to prayer practitioners for, among other things. I would listen to them and I would try to find the opportunity to ask them, and what do you have faith in? What do you trust? And sometimes it would take a moment to get there, to find that. And without denying anything that the person was going through, together we faced the problem, the fear, and simultaneously remembered the trust. And that was what gave them the strength to see the fear, to see past it, and to begin to move. Today, at the end of service, we will see a video from one of our licensed prayer practitioners about the benefits of spiritual coaching and the kind of work that a person does in spiritual coaching. You may know already that after each service, we have our 5-minute prayer sessions in the Grinton Chapel, and those are wonderful. I think of it like pruning the leaves on a bush. Clean things up a bit, get you going. However, if fear is like a tree, someone said, pruning the leaves is like dealing with the symptoms, and it won't be enough. We may have to get to the roots. Ask yourself, what is the biggest thing right now that is keeping me from living my life well? And what is it rooted in? Now, that may take more than 5 minutes to discuss, to discover, to face, and to be brave enough to move through. I want to tell you about Isaac Lidsky. He lost his sight due to a rare genetic disease. And on a TED Talk, this is what he said. Fear warps your reality because it replaces the unknown with the awful. Isn't that good? Fear warps your reality because it replaces the unknown with the awful. It's called awfulizing. And in that form, fear can be misguiding, deceptive, misleading, especially if we place our trust squarely and only on the awful. Well, you know how that goes. When he lost his sight, Isaac's fear voice told him that it was a death sentence, the end of so many things for him. Blindness, his fear voice told him, meant that he would live an unremarkable life alone. He believed it for a while, and so he lived it out until he faced everything and rose above it and lived. And had he not gone beyond his fear voices, he would not have come to the realization that we seek to have ourselves here. The realization of what it means for a person to create an individual reality. As he tells the story, he had to start living his life with his eyes wide open while being blind. That's what he called it, living with eyes wide open. In doing so, he became a successful businessman. He got married and is currently raising a beautiful family, I think 5 children. He's an inspiring speaker and so much more. He says that living life with eyes wide open is a discipline that a person can choose. It's a discipline of facing fears and moving beyond them, and must be practiced. And here are the elements he says are necessary in order to do that. First, hold yourself accountable for every moment, every thought, and every detail. But not in a blaming way, more in the way of watching the direction in which you are using the creative power that you are gifted with, by asking, where is this taking me? Next, see beyond your fears. For example, consider the best outcome sometimes. Not always the worst outcome. Practice the best outcome sometimes. That's called vision. Next, recognize your assumptions. In other words, check if what you are thinking is accurate. In a very famous prayer written by our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, he says these lines, Let me not depend on my own counsel. Next, harness your internal strengths and silence your internal critic. Well, those are strong words. In Science of Mind, I learned it slightly differently. I learned to talk to my voices inside, to even thank them for their concern. I learned, don't make enemies with any part of your being. Integrate it all. Next, correct your misconceptions about luck and success. Oh, I grew up in a very superstitious family with ongoing fear of randomness. And when I found Science of Mind and I learned the affirmative prayer practice called spiritual mind treatment, it reduced the role of luck and took superstition into the background. And I learned to nurture my mind and to use the creative power of the universe more in a direction of my choosing. Next, accept your strengths and weaknesses and understand the difference between them. And then seek support in areas where you can't figure that out alone. The last one, open your heart to your bountiful blessings. When I read that one, it took me back again to remembering when I was a professional practitioner, prayer practitioner. I was doing spiritual coaching with clients. Sometimes my clients would come and they were being very hard on themselves, and they would have a very long list of all their faults, what was wrong with them. which is normal. And I would listen and I would try to find a way to ask them, and simultaneously, what is also beautiful and wonderful about you? And for some, that was a little more challenging to get to. I think because their minds were so accustomed to one direction, and their minds wanted to rest in the danger zone. They were using the one energy of the universe exclusively for one direction. I think Isaac Litsky would call that fictions that you perceive as reality. Have you ever believed something that isn't true? When Isaac starts his TED talk, he tells the story of young Dorothy. Young Dorothy is a girl who's fascinated with her goldfish. And her dad explains to her that fish move forward by wagging their tails back and forth. Dorothy thinks about it and she figures out then that fish must swim backwards by wagging their heads back and forth. And in her mind, it's a fact, as true as any other. And the point that Isaac is making is that sometimes our lives can be full of fish swimming backwards. He means our assumptions that we haven't checked, faulty logic that we are being guided by, loyalty to our bias about what is right and what is wrong and who is right and who is wrong. And these attitudes of mind, when they are driving the bus, they take their toll on us in the form of missed connections, missed opportunities, unrealized potential, and they can foster a sense of insecurity and distrust when all along we want just the opposite. We want connection and warmth. And when it comes to facing the issues of our world, our planet, we need warmth and trust and vision and reverence and love and awe. We need our fish to be swimming forward. The American author and political activist Helen Keller, who was also blind, said, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision." Now, if my vision for my planet is created exclusively by my fear voices, I may be swimming in the wrong direction. Let me at least consider, is there another way I can use the creative power I've been gifted with? Going blind was Isaac's greatest fear at first, but it became one of his most profound blessings because, as he said, it gave him vision. Vision of a life of meaning, significance, connection, love. And fair enough, to get there, he had to step up to the fear, face it, and step out of the cycle of his fear voices. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, in a very well-known address called the Sermon by the Sea, wrote, "Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe, or of spirit, or of humankind, or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight." Now, if it turns out that you find, like many of us, that you still have fear about our planet, about our world, about anything, please don't go home that way today. don't go home without stepping into our Grinton Chapel for a spiritual mind treatment, an affirmative prayer. One of our prayer practitioners will help you prune that tree by telling you the truth of your being in no uncertain terms. And then, if necessary, and you feel you'd like to get to the roots, you can consider making an appointment for a more extended session with a licensed prayer practitioner for some coaching. Their business cards are always on the wall next to the entrance of the bookstore, or you can visit our newly designed website with the directory of practitioners where you can read about them and how they work, or you may have received this brochure when you came in with a directory of practitioners right there. Or perhaps you feel like an intermediary step would be appropriate for you. Well, there's another resource on our website, our online affirmative prayer library, where you can search for prayers by topic, like travel, health, fear, like this one by prayer practitioner Diane Tapanya. I invite you to breathe in and exhale, letting your eyes close. I am a channel for positive change. Everything in existence is an outpicturing of the creative force of the Divine One. The love of this One flows through all of creation, animates all life, brings harmony to all of existence. And I am an aspect of this creative force. The love of Spirit is acting through me right now. So I tune myself into this reality. I realize that through me, love creates and is forever revealing greater harmony. I identify with that. In this way, I realize I am a channel for positive change in this world. Because my actions are rooted in the unlimited creative force, I am enough, just as I am. So I cooperate with the emerging expression of a greater harmony. I accept that positive change is a natural outcome of this alignment through this prayer. So I give thanks for this realization. I invite you now to sit with me in a moment of quiet contemplation. I invite you to let the next breath you take be deeper than the one before, followed by a sigh.